Ladies and gentlemen, God doesn't need your words. He hears your wounds. That's the kind of truth we forget in a world that's always telling us to perform, to speak, to shout out our pain for it to be valid. But God, He's not like people. He's not waiting for a perfect prayer, a memorized scripture, or a church voice. He's not impressed by loud cries if they don't come from the soul, and He's not deaf to the tears that fall without a sound. Sometimes your greatest prayer is the one you never say. Sometimes your most honest conversation with God happens in total silence, when you've run out of words and strength, and all you have left is pain. That's the kind of moment God leans into. That's when He listens, not to the voice, but to the wound. You ever been so broken that you couldn't explain it? So tired that even the people who love you can't understand what you're going through? You nod, you smile, you say, "I'm okay," when inside you're barely hanging on. That's where the wound speaks louder than the mouth ever could, and that's what God hears. He hears the language of the heart, the secret cries of the spirit, the hidden grief that even you can't describe. And He responds not to how well you perform your faith, but to how honestly you feel it. He's not waiting for eloquence. He's waiting for you to show up with your scars, because wounds are not weakness in His eyes. They're signals, they're messages, they're truth. And when the world wants you to hide them, cover them, pretend like they're not there, God says, "Let me see them." He says, "I don't need the version of you that's got it all together. I want the version of you that's bleeding, the version that's honest, the version that doesn't know what to do next." Because in the wound, there's intimacy. In the wound, there's trust. It takes courage to bleed in front of God and say, "This is where I'm hurting." And when you do that, you're not just heard, you're held. The wound speaks a language only God can fully understand. People may misinterpret you. They may think you're too emotional, too soft, too dramatic. But God knows what that pain really means. He knows what that silence is saying. He knows how long you've been carrying it, how hard you've tried to hide it, and how badly you want to let it go. And even when you can't cry anymore, even when you feel numb and disconnected, He still hears you, because He's not listening to what you say. He's listening to what you feel. He's tuned into the heartbeat behind your hurt, the silent scream in your soul. That's what moves Him. That's what calls Him close. Silence doesn't scare Him. It invites Him. We think that when we go quiet, God backs away. That when we stop praying out loud, when we stop singing the songs or quoting the verses, somehow we're disconnected. But the truth is, silence is not the absence of faith. Sometimes it's the purest form of it, because silence says, "I'm still here even though I don't know what to say." Silence says, "I'm not pretending anymore. I'm just sitting in the middle of this storm, hoping you're still with me." And that kind of honesty pulls God closer than any loud declaration ever could. There are moments in life when the noise fades, when the crowd walks away, when the support vanishes, and all that's left is the echo of your own thoughts. And in that stillness, it's easy to believe you're alone. But that stillness, that very place of quiet, is where God is most present. Not because you're shouting for Him, but because you've finally stopped trying to perform. You've stopped trying to make the pain look pretty. You've stopped trying to wrap your struggle in nice words and spiritual clichés. That's when He comes close, not to fix your silence, but to sit with you in it. We live in a world that equates silence with weakness. If you're not talking, you're not fighting. If you're not speaking up, you're giving up. But God doesn't play by those rules. He knows that silence can be sacred. That silence can be a space of surrender. That silence is where your spirit rests when your heart is too tired to keep pushing. And in that sacred quiet, He speaks, not always in booming thunder or flashing signs, but in gentle whispers that only a still heart can hear. He doesn't need noise to find you. He needs openness. He needs you to stop running from the silence and start meeting Him in it. You may be sitting in silence right now, wondering if God has forgotten you. You may be walking through days where the heavens feel shut and the answers don't come. But silence is not proof of absence. Silence is the soil where presence grows. It's where God does some of His deepest work. Because when all the distractions are gone, when your voice gives out, when your plans fall apart, when all you have left is breath in your lungs and a flicker of faith in your chest, that's when He begins to move. He doesn't need you to say the right thing. He doesn't need you to explain the pain. He just needs you to sit still long enough to let him in. The silence is not your enemy. It's not punishment. It's not a void. It's a doorway, and when you stop being afraid of it, when you stop trying to fill it with noise, you'll see it's an invitation to intimacy, to healing, to truth. When faith breaks, love answers. We like to think our faith has to be perfect, that it has to be strong all the time, unshakable, untouchable. We hold ourselves to this standard like God only listens when we believe with everything we've got. But the truth is, faith will break, not once, not twice, but many times in this life. You'll hit walls, you'll question everything. You'll pray and hear nothing. You'll wait and see nothing. You'll believe and still feel like you're sinking. That doesn't mean you're failing. That means you're human, and it's in those cracks, those broken, raw, honest places, where love shows up. Not the kind of love that says, just believe harder. No, the kind of love that holds you when you can't believe at all. God never asked you to carry the weight of perfect faith. He asked you to be real. He knew you'd doubt. He knew you'd cry. He knew you'd reach a point where you'd look up and say, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And in that exact moment, love speaks. It says, I've got you. Not because you earned it, not because you said all the right things, but because that's what real love does. It shows up when everything else falls apart. It fills in the gaps that your faith can't cover. It stands in the fire with you when your prayers feel empty and your spirit feels numb. There are moments when you'll feel like you're letting God down, like your fear is louder than your trust, like your questions are drowning out your hope. But He's not intimidated by your doubts. He's not disappointed by your tears. Love isn't fragile like that. It's not shaken when your faith is. In fact, love becomes clearest when your faith is weakest. That's when it steps in and reminds you that you're still seen, still known, still held. Even when you don't have the strength to reach for God, He's already reaching for you. Love doesn't keep a scorecard of how strong your faith is. It doesn't wait for you to get your act together. It meets you exactly where you are. In the pain, in the confusion, in the mess. And it says, even now, you are not alone. When faith breaks, love answers not with judgment, but with grace. Not with silence, but with presence. It shows up in the stillness, in the waiting, in the in-between where everything feels uncertain. It's not loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's just a breath you didn't think you'd have. A peace that makes no sense. A reminder deep in your soul that even when everything is falling apart, you are still loved. You don't have to hold it all together. You don't have to prove anything. Because the moment your faith cracks open, love walks in and fills the space with something stronger than certainty. It fills it with compassion, with patience. He shows up where the world walks out. That's the difference between divine love and human approval. People celebrate you when you're strong, when you're winning, when you're the version of yourself that's easy to applaud. But the moment you fall, the moment you struggle, the moment you start to break in ways they don't understand, many will leave. They'll distance themselves, give you silence, or offer you words that don't heal anything. They'll make your pain feel like a burden, your process feel like a problem, but not God. He doesn't leave when things get messy. He doesn't walk away when the light in you dims. That's when He draws closer, not out of pity, but out of purpose. When the world turns its back on you, God opens His arms wider. When friends disappear, when support fades, when even your own voice turns against you, He steps into that emptiness with presence. He doesn't need a reason to stay. He stays because that's who He is. He stays in the hospital room, in the courtroom, in the dark apartment when no one checks in. He stays in the sleepless nights and the heavy mornings, in the moments when you can't even pray right. He stays not because you're strong, but because He is. Not because you earned it, but because you need it. People will love the image of you, the version they're comfortable with. But God sees behind all that. He sees the battles nobody knows about. He sees the moments you smile to survive. And when the world sees broken, He sees becoming. When the world sees failure, He sees foundation. So when others step back, He steps in. When others judge, he understands. He knows what hurt did to you. He knows what disappointment built inside you. He knows how long you've been carrying what should have crushed you. And he's not going anywhere. It's easy to feel abandoned in this life. Easy to believe that if people left, maybe you're not worth staying for. Maybe you're too much. Maybe you're too complicated, but you're not. You're not too much for God. You're not too broken for His grace. He shows up in the middle of the story, not just at the happy ending. He shows up when you're questioning everything, when you're doubting yourself, when you're replaying the same mistakes over and over. He doesn't need perfection to be present. He just needs permission. He needs you to let Him into the places others avoided, the spaces you locked up because of shame or fear, and the beauty is, once He's in, He doesn't leave. He doesn't come for a moment. He comes to stay. He doesn't panic when you fall back. He doesn't flinch at your honesty. He holds you steady when the ground under you shifts. Where people gave up, He keeps believing. Where they stopped showing up, He keeps showing up with new mercy, new strength, new reminders that you are never walking this road alone.